Imagine you're at a dinner with friends or to a family gathering, and the mood is perfect. You're laughing, the conversation is flowing, and you feel completely like yourself. Then someone pulls out a phone and says those four words that it instantly change the temperature of the room. Let's take a photo. While everyone else leans in and smiles, you feel a sudden, sharp contraction in your chest. You might volunteer to be the person taking the picture just to stay out of it. You might hide behind a taller friend. Or if the photo is taken, you're the first one to grab the phone to see if it's okay, only to feel a sinking sense of disappointment when you see the result. It doesn't look like a big deal to anyone else. But to you, it feels like a fundamental mismatch. It's as if the person in the frame is a total stranger, wearing your clothes. If you've spent your life avoiding the lens, you've probably been told you're just camera shy or that you need more self-confidence. But for many, the discomfort has very little to do with vanity or even low self-esteem. It's actually rooted in a complex psychological tension between how we experience ourselves from the inside and how we are captured as a static object from the outside. Think about the way you exist when no one is watching. You are a process. You are a fluid collection of thoughts, movements, and shifting emotions. You don't see yourself, you feel yourself. Your identity is a verb. It's something you are doing. But the moment a camera is pointed at you, that verb is forced to become a noun. You are suddenly pulled out of your internal experience and pushed into an external one. You become an object to be viewed, analyzed, and judged. Psychologists refer to this as self-objectification anxiety. It's the uncomfortable shift from being the subject of your own life to being an object in someone else's gallery. For some, this transition is seamless, but for others, the sensation of being watched through a lens feels like a loss of agency. You are no longer in control of your narrative, the camera is. This is why you might find yourself performing for the camera in a way that feels incredibly fake. You might overthink the angle of your chin, the tension in your shoulders, or the exact width of your smile. You're trying to manage the external image to match your internal sense of self, but because the two are governed by different laws, they rarely align. This creates a heavy cognitive load. Your brain is working overtime to bridge the gap between how I feel and how I look. And the friction of that effort is what makes the experience so draining. There's also a very real biological reason why photos can feel like a betrayal. Most of us are used to our reflection in a mirror, which is a flipped image. When we see ourselves in a photograph, we are seeing the unflipped version, the way the world sees us. Because our faces are naturally asymmetrical, this tiny shift feels wrong to our brains. It's a phenomenon called the mere exposure effect. We prefer what we are familiar with. And for most of us, the person in the photo is someone we only see occasionally. It feels like an uncanny valley version of ourselves. Close, but not quite right. But here is where it gets interesting. The hatred of being photographed often goes much deeper than just not liking your reflection. The real reason isn't always about how you look. It's about the loss of your fluid identity. You see, a photograph is a frozen second. It's a static, permanent record of a single, fleeting moment. But your internal identity is never static. You are a different person in the morning than you are at night. You are different when you're inspired than when you're tired. When you see a photo of yourself that you hate, it's often because that single frame has captured a version of you that feels dead. It lacks the movement, the energy, and the context that makes you who you are. To you, the photo feels like a lie because it claims to be the truth of your appearance, yet it leaves out the most important part: your essence. For people who are deeply introspective or highly sensitive, this reduction of their entire being into a two-dimensional image feels like a small form of emotional violence. It's an oversimplification of a very complex human being. This is also why you might find it much easier to be in a video than a still photo. In a video, there is movement. There is a sequence. Your personality can leak through the frames, but in a photo, you're trapped. If the camera happens to catch you in a moment of transition, a half smile, a blink, a slump in posture, that becomes the permanent you in that record. The fear of being photographed is often the fear of being misunderstood. It's the fear that a single, clumsy second will be used to define your entire identity. When we look at it through this lens, hating the camera isn't a sign of weakness or a fixable personality flaw. It's actually a sign of how much you value your internal world. It's a protection of your fluid self. You are resisting the pressure to be an object because, deep down, that you are a soul. You are protecting the parts of yourself that can't be captured by a CMOS sensor or a glass lens. This awareness changes the way we look at those awkward group photos or the tagged pictures we quickly hide on social media. It wasn't a random insecurity. It was a clash between your rich, moving internal life and the cold, static nature of a photograph. You weren't being difficult or vain. You were simply feeling the weight of being reduced to an image when you are, in reality, a lived experience. Once you see it as a conflict of identity rather than a lack of confidence, the pressure begins to lift. You realize that the camera's inability to capture you isn't a failure on your part. It's a limitation of the technology. A camera can capture light, but it can't capture the way it feels to be you. It can capture a face, but it can't capture the history, the thoughts, or the complexity behind it. Understanding this pattern doesn't mean you'll suddenly love every photo taken of you, but it might mean you stop apologizing for the way you feel. It means recognizing that your discomfort was never about being unattractive. It was about the fact that you are too vast to be contained in a single frame. It was never random. It was a pattern of choosing the internal over the external. And that awareness alone changes how you move through the world. It's not about fixing the image. It's about honoring the person who exists outside of it, because the most real parts of you are the ones that a camera will never be able to see. Understanding yourself, Fee, is the beginning of everything.